Very much for joining me. My name is John Allen. I'm here with Shane Murphy, our director, and today we're going to be talking about the home energy upgrade loan scheme. It's probably not maybe as well advertised as we think it should be. We think it's an excellent offering that's available. It's a loan, a low cost loan that you can get when you're doing home energy upgrades. So we'll be going through to start with what the HEULS is, the Home Energy Upgrade Loan Scheme is, why it's out there, what the purpose of it is. We'll be going through the key criteria, what you need to hit in order to be eligible to get the loan. Unfortunately, it's not just a case of going to the bank and ask for the loan. They want the money to be used for home upgrades, and the way they prove that is that you're getting SEI grants. It is linked to the SEI grants, and so we'll be going through the value of those grants and how the various systems work. There's the one-stop shop grant, the CEG, and the individual grants. So we'll be discussing them, the eligibility criteria for each of the grants, and as a consequence for the HEULS. And then we'll be going through how you apply, what's the next steps you need to take, and with case studies. We do have time for Q&A, and we'll be probably around maybe 40 minutes over the course of the webinar to get through our slides. If you do have questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A box down at the bottom of the screen. Shane is monitoring them here. I'll keep an eye on them here as well. We'll try and answer as many as we can as we're going. If you do have, or if you do want CPD points, if you're maybe an architect or a BER assessor or an engineer and you're looking for CPD points, if you just put your name maybe and your email address into that Q&A box, we'll get them sent out to you next week. So yeah, don't be shy about asking for those. These webinars aren't really focused on Ashgrove. They're not product specific, or that Ashgrove are the best company in the world. But I will give you 2 minutes on us, where we've come from, and I suppose why we're doing these webinars, and why we're able to talk about these topics. So we've been in home energy since 2001. Heat pumps, and it would have been solar thermal at the time, and ventilation. Heat pumps and underfloor doing heating and cooling. Since 2001, we've expanded and are now doing insulation and windows and doors, which allows us to qualify for kind of all of the SEI grants, the one-stop shop, the CEG, the BEH, and the warmer home scheme. Last year, to give you an idea of the scale of the projects that we're doing, we did about 18% of the one-stop shop and the CEG projects, excluding the approved housing bodies. So we've done we're doing large volumes of work every year. We've seen a lot of different variations of projects. We've quite good relationships with SEI, and they generally work with us in order to get projects over the line, and help us out to understand why something mightn't comply and how we can make it work. So yeah, we've seen a lot of unusual scenarios, and that, I suppose, experience stands to us. We've well over 95 people in our office now. The purpose of those people is to get back to you, the customer, as quickly as possible, get good, accurate information to you. We try to do it obviously through the webinars, to large volumes of people, but also getting back to individual people as well as their project-specific inquiries come in. We do also have a professional network spread out throughout the country. 25 years in business, we've developed relationships with architects, engineers, plumbers, electricians, roofers, BER assessors. We are always looking for a few more people. We're light in a couple of areas that maybe we want to be stronger in. So if you are in the industry and want to have a chat, feel free to reach out. We'd be delighted to set up a call and chat to you. And as probably most of you will know, we do a lot of these free information events. We do well over 100 webinars a year. We tried to keep it to 100 at the start of the year, but we're drifting over that number currently. We also have the app whatgrant.ie, which has short little videos, maybe 5-7 minutes, to explain the different types of grants that people can watch at their leisure. You can also share that if you are a professional in the industry. You can share that app with somebody quite easily. You type in their email address on the home screen, and they get a link to download it straight away. So handy for a lot of BER assessors that we're talking to who are going into houses and getting questions on grants. They can share that app with them quite easily. We do also do in-person in-person seminars and training events. The next one we have is on the 4th of September. It's specifically around heat pumps and trying to get certainty around the outcome of installing a heat pump. It's mainly aimed at installers and maybe engineers. If you are interested in attending, I don't know what sort of numbers we have currently, if there is still spots available.
There are, but there's about 10 remaining, I'd say.
Yeah, so feel free to reach out if we still have spots available. We'll facilitate you. It's in person in Mallow. So on to HEULS. So HEULS is the shortened term for the Home Energy Upgrade Loan Scheme. The purpose of it is to remove the barrier of the capital costs for home energy upgrades. So there is grants available for doing your home energy upgrades, unless you're maybe applying through the Warmer Home Scheme or potentially in the energy poor category. You generally have to contribute a cost towards it. So there is capital that the homeowner has to put up. And what the HEULS is there for is to allow you to spread that capital out over anything from 10 years. So it removes the barrier of having to have 6, 7, or 26 or 27,000 of an initial outlay. It's offered by the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland. So they're the people who are kind of behind it. There is a guarantee from the European Investment Bank. So anybody who defaults, the European Investment Bank is guaranteeing it. That removes the risk or reduces the risk from the banks that are, I suppose, dishing it out. But the banks still have an obligation to do their due diligence. It's coordinated with SEI grants, so you can only get it if you're claiming SEI grants as well. And it's offered through the three pillar banks, AIB, Bank of Ireland, and Permanent TSB. Post Money also offers it, and there's a number of credit unions as well. Depending where you are in the country, they may be suitable for you. The interest rates are quite low, again, because that guarantee is in place. The banks have less risk, which allows them to reduce the interest rate. Typically, kind of 2.99 is probably the lowest we've seen from AIB. They're anything up to 4.2. Some of the banks are go with maybe the slightly higher interest rate of 4.2 if you're only borrowing a low amount. And as you get up into the bigger amounts, the interest rates go up. So they all structure it differently. Some of them have it staged in brackets, and some of them have a flat rate. So AIB, for example, is 2.99 no matter what you're lending. As I said, the banks still have to prove that the customer has the ability to repay the loan. So even though it's guaranteed by the European Investment Bank, the banks just can't approve you immediately. And I suppose there's two sides of that. Number one, there's very little chance you're going to pay it back. And number two, maybe you're putting yourself under undue financial pressure trying to pay it back. So the banks still have to do their due diligence in order to make sure you can repay it. There is specific criteria that need to be hit as well, and we go through that in the later on.
Before you go away from it,
yeah,
I think it's important to say that maybe you said it but haven't written down. I was making notes that there's no solicitors involved with this. Right, so yeah. Unlike maybe another mortgage of that size where they're attaching your 75,000 to the deeds of the house or whatever it is, there's no solicitor involved. So
yeah, and it doesn't affect your mortgage. There's no lien put on the property. There's no.
And by the way, if you did have a mortgage, And in the event that there was a problem where you had to sell the house, the mortgage gets paid off first, so they have first dibs on the money.
Yeah.
And if there is money left over, it goes to paying off this loan secondly.
Yeah. So there's no lien put on the property, so you don't have to get solicitors involved. So just to give you a high level view of the SEI grants and kind of how they work. So the BEH is the individual grants. That's just a grant for doing typically a single element. You could do multiple of them at once, but typically what we see is maybe somebody who's wants to insulate their attic. They apply to SEI, they get approval fairly quick, €2,000 for detached houses, and get a contractor to do the works and submit all your paperwork, jump through the quality hoops, and SEI pay out the grants. So you can see the grant amounts there for each of the elements. For your cavity wall, you're getting 1,800. If you're doing dry lining, you're getting 4,500, all through for detached houses through the BEH. The one-stop shop and the CEG has very similar grant amounts, but there is a few extra. So rafter insulation, floor insulation, mechanical ventilation and air tightness and project management, and you can get the home energy assessment grant as well. So there's about €11,000 of additional grants that you can get through the one-stop shop. But through the one-stop shop and the CEG, you're also de-risked in that you have a person who's responsible for getting the grants. The biggest area that we see of this is with the recently announced Windows and Doors grant, which got great headlines and was super. Everybody was delighted to see that you can get a grant for Windows on its own without having to do any other upgrades. But there was a lot of caveats added to it. So your HLI had to be at a certain standard, or your wall U values had to be at a certain standard. And after works are done, the ventilation needs to be up to specification. We've seen a number of people who applied, got approval, and then when they went to draw down, they did not comply for whatever reason. So that is the risk with going through the individual measures. If you don't do the works to comply with the grants, you're not getting the money. Whereas with the CEG or the one-stop shop, you have that safety net of somebody who's looking after the whole lot. So on the HEULS, the key criteria, as I said, only with the SEI grants. That's the first thing. You can't claim this grant down unless you're claiming SEI grants as well. The value is between 5,000 and 75,000, and that's net of grants. So after the grants are taken off the costs, the value of your works or the value of the loan you can draw down is anywhere between 5 and 75,000. You can spread it out from 1 to 10 years, so the terms are quite flexible. Obviously, it impacts your repayments amount. You can draw down an additional 25% on top of the cost of the works. So they say that this is for additional related works. In reality, they don't really care. They've no real way of checking what you used it for. The principle behind it is that as you're doing the upgrade works, you might need to paint some of the walls after you did some dry lining or something, or replace some skirting. They're happy for that for you to get a bit of extra money to allow you to do that whilst you're doing the energy upgrade works. They don't ever check that. As long as you draw down the grants, that's the main thing that they're checking for. So the minimum cost of the works that needs to be in place, so the energy upgrade works needs to cost at least 3,750 in order for you to fit into that €5,000 bracket. You also need to get at least a 20% improvement in your BER. We'll be talking about that in a bit more detail later on. So the kilowatt hours per meter squared per year that your BER has needs to improve by 20% in order to be eligible for it. And there's a number of grant programs you can get it down through. So for the one-stop shop or the CEG, if you're fitting into that category, you're going to be eligible for the HEULS. So if you're eligible for the one-stop shop and the CEG, you'll be eligible for the HEULS. I'm sure there's a highly unusual 1% case that might exclude you, but for the purpose of today, you fit in. Under the BEH, it's a small bit more complicated. So if you're going down the individual routes, for insulation only, you might be eligible. Windows and doors is a question mark as well. And for PV, you cannot get the HEULS if you're just doing PV on its own. So they don't want to support that any more than they already are through the grants. If you get PV as part of a one-stop shop or a CEG, they will support it as part of the whole home energy upgrade. But if you're just getting PV on its own, you cannot get the HEULS grant. So that 20% improvement that I spoke about is based on this 488.81 kilowatt hours in this example of a BER cert. This is what the new BER certs look like that were brought out in May. So this particular house has a primary energy use of 488.81 kilowatt hours per meter squared. If they were going down through the individual BEH, they'd need to increase that or decrease it, down to 391.05 kilowatt hours per meter squared per year. So that's where the post-works BER needs to end up. That's something that you need to calculate before you start works to make sure that you'll hit that criteria. And there's a form that we'll be looking at later on, which the one-stop shop or the CEG needs to complete in order for you to bring it into the bank. So that 20% improvement means that, and the value of the grants, so the net value of the works or the net cost of the works needing to be 3,750 at least, means that in attic, you're unlikely to get that 20% improvement if you're just upgrading your attic. The cost of an attic insulation, unless your attic is very large after the grants, is unlikely to be 3,750. So if you're getting attic on its own, it's unlikely you will qualify for the HEULS. Cavity is similar. Your BER improvement is unlikely, and the net cost is probably less than 3,750. So again, if you're just getting cavity on its own, you probably won't qualify for the HEULS. If you're getting external wall insulation, the BER 20% uplift is possible. This is because your wall area is quite large. There's quite a lot of heat being lost through it. If you improve that U value, you're reducing that number, and therefore that 20% becomes achievable. And the cost is likely to be greater than 3,750. I'd say that's guaranteed to be greater than that. Windows, similarly, it is possible to get that improvement on the BER, even though I'd say more difficult than external wall insulation. And again, the net cost is likely to be greater than 3,750. So if you're combining some of these, it is possible that you'll get that uplift, but that qualification needs to be checked before you start. You need a form to submit to the bank, and you're possibly fitting into one-stop shop territory anyway, so it might be worthwhile discussing with a one-stop shop. All of this is based around the BER. So getting a BER assessment done and getting somebody who's willing to do the additional calculations on top of just handing you the piece of paper that is the BER. Obviously, when you're paying for a BER assessment, you're paying for somebody to assess the house as it is and give you the piece of paper. When you're going back and asking, oh, well, what about if I upgraded my attic? What would I get to? What about if I upgraded my attic and did my windows? There's a lot of different scenarios that they have to run. That all takes time. So yeah, there's just to maybe appreciate the value that's in that. So with the one-stop shop or the CEG, why that fits in automatically is because there's already eligibility criteria that you need to hit. For the individual grants, you can go do the individual grants, so get your postworks BER and submit it. They don't require you to hit a minimum BER at the end. For the one-stop shop and the CEG, there's very specific criteria that you need to hit. So your house must be built before 2011, and you must get to a B post-works. So no matter where you start on the scale, the post-works BER must be at least a B. You must get 100 kilowatt hours per meter squared per year uplift. So these numbers here on the right-hand side of the scale are what the 100 kilowatt hour or what the kilowatt hour per meter squared ranges that your BER scale fits into. That has to improve by 100 kilowatt hours in order to fit into the one-stop shop or the CEG. That, combined with getting to the B, means that you're going to hit the 20% rate in all scenarios. The 100 kilowatt hour uplift is not required if you're installing a B or if you're installing a heat pump. The heat pump, they deem that you're getting very close to the 100 kilowatt hour uplift, and they don't want to penalize you if you've done all the right things. You've got your house to a decent insulation standard, you've installed the heat pump, and you're 10 kilowatt hours short. They're happy for you to fit into the one-stop shop or the CEG.
Plus, Johnny, if you already start off where you had the house done really, really well 2 years ago,
yeah,
your heat pump is now the last bit, and you maybe one or two other bits. It's almost impossible because the house is so good to get the 100 kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
And if you start off at, say, a bottom of an A, you physically can't get
yes,
over kilowatt hour improvement.
Yeah, so they don't want to penalise you because you've already done good things already.
A year ago, but not as part of the same project. It's
correct.
Clear.
Yes, yeah. So what that means, in order to fit into the one-stop shop, in reality, you need to either install a heat pump or PV. The heat pump you're guaranteed to fit in. With the PV, there's calculations that need to be done in order to make sure that you hit that 100 kilowatt hour uplift.
PV alone you can't, that's be PV plus.
Correct, yes, sorry, PV plus insulation measures. The important thing as well is that all of these calculations are done before you start works. So there's no guesswork. It's not a case of we'll install plenty of insulation there and hopefully we'll get up to a B at the end. It's all calculated in the SEI software by the one-stop shop or the BER assessor in order to confirm, yes, we do hit the criteria. So we're just going to give you a case study now of a one-stop shop. These are houses that we did in Mallow a few years ago. So they were 103 meters squared, semi-detached houses. They were currently a C2. We upgraded. They actually rang looking for solar, but we were able to do an analysis and put an alternative offering that we thought was suitable in front of them. So we were able to upgrade their attic insulation. Their attic insulation was, I think it was 150 mil up there already. We upgraded it to 300 mil. We pumped their cavity walls. We installed the air-to-water heat pump, put in the PV panels, upgraded their windows and doors, and put in an EV charger for them. And the net cost to them was €15,106. So they got all that work done. The only bill that they had to pay was that €15,106. So obviously the cost of the works were greater than that. It was in around €37,350, but the SEI grants were €22,250. So that means that the net cost was all the homeowner had to pay. They didn't have to worry about the €37,350. That was for Ashgrove to worry about. The homeowner paid the $15,000 in a deposit and a final payment. Ashgrove gathered all the paperwork and went through the QA inspection process with SEI, both desktop and on site, submitted all the paperwork, submitted the final BER, and then got SEI reviewed it and paid the grants down to Ashgrove after a few weeks. So Ashgrove were funding that €22,250 until all the final paperwork was done and the homeowner didn't need to worry about it. So they got up from a C2 to an A2. The original goal was to try and get into the green mortgage territory. So they got well beyond that and into the A's. So how the HEULS actually wasn't out at the time that this project was done, but how that would have worked if we used a 3% interest rate over 10 years. So the net cost of the works was 15,106. So that's what the HEULS form or the SBCI is looking at. That means that their repayments were €145 per month. So they spread out, instead of having to put up that €115,000, they could have spread it out over 10 years. They could have taken more than the €15,000. By the way, you can also take less than the €15,000 if you want. If you only want 5,000 or 7,000 of it, that's fine. That's no problem. They can take more as well. The max loan that they could have taken through the HEULS was 20,141. And that would have meant their repayments at €194 per month. This is all based on a 3% interest rate over 10 years. So they can spread that out over 10 years. What we're seeing a lot of now is people who are getting additional works done or requesting us to do additional works. We're seeing a lot of aircon, particularly over the last few weeks. People are looking at maybe specifically putting one aircon unit in a bedroom or something to keep that cool. And that's something that we can all facilitate through the one-stop shop. When we have electricians on site, there's people who are looking for CCTV systems. So when we have electricians there, we can deliver the gear to the site and they can install the CCTV while they're there. And there's other kind of items like that when we have trades on site, that we make the best use of them rather than having to get them back out to do something. This is a CEG case study. So in terms of the one-stop shop, that's where we see 90% of the HEULS zone, 99% of the HEULS paperwork that we're filling out is going towards that. The CEGs, how we work them, it's the community energy grant. We think they're suitable where there's a builder and where there's maybe a big extension going on site. Like in this example here, those people are in reality getting a mortgage as well. So there's no real benefit of getting two loans from the same financial institution. Your mortgage rates are fairly similar to the HEULS rate. And so we see most people who are just adding this on to their mortgage rather than getting the HEULS. For the purpose of this webinar, I've just put in rough figures of how this project works. So the homeowner comes to Ashgrove. We look at the project, take into account the extension that's being done, look at the upgrades that they're doing to the original house, which is the only part that's getting grant aided, by the way. The original house is what the grant's for. You can install all the windows you want in the extension. They have to be up to a good standard and comply with building regs. But what SEI are concerned about is upgrading the original house. So we give the homeowner a specification for those works, what they need to put, how much insulation they need to put into the floor in order to get the grant, similar attic, external wall, the maximum U value that they can put in for windows, the size of the heat pump that needs to go in. We give all that specification that needs to be adhered to. We're obviously happy to talk through with the builder or with the architect or the engineer or anybody else who's involved in the project. What we don't want is for something to get Chinese whispers scenario where somebody maybe slightly misunderstands something and it's communicated slightly wonky to somebody else. We're happy to talk to as many professionals are involved as the project as needs be to make sure that we stay between the ditches. And once that project is complete, then again we gather all the paperwork, submit it to SEI, go through the quality process with them, and we draw down the grants and pay the grants back to the homeowner. So that's typically 38,000. Sorry, in this project, it's 38,250 euro is what they got. They got the full suite: heat pumps, attic, external wall, windows, doors, floor insulation, mechanical ventilation, project management, air tightness, the whole lot. So that's kind of nearly the max grant you can get. You can get a small bit more if you're doing rafter instead of attic, but that's the kind of max grants you're getting. In a costing scenario, so I've just picked figures for this one. So if the total cost of the project was €350,000, what the HEULS or the SPCI call the eligible works, so the energy upgrade cost. So this is how much did digging up the floor and putting in the floor insulation cost, how much did the EWI cost and the windows cost. I just put in a figure of 100,000 for that. They got grants of 38,250 as we've seen in the previous slide. So that means the net cost was 61,750, and that's the net cost of the eligible works. And that's the number that the HEULS team are looking at. So those repayments then are coming to 596 per month, again at 3% interest rate over 10 years. The max loan they can get, so they can get the 75,000. That's the max loan that they could have gotten, and that'll be €724 per month. Again, I'd have to say it's very rare we see somebody going through the HEULS through when they're doing this type of works. As I said, most people are going for are either topping up their mortgage or going for a new mortgage on this house. So it's rarely that we see somebody who's taking the €75,000 loan for this project. But that's an example. So how to apply? The first thing that you need to do is to establish the works, what works you want to do, the cost of those works and the grants. That doesn't have to be down to the last euro, but it needs to be a kind of an idea of what you're thinking of doing and rough costs and grants. We can then get the HEULS form completed. So that form is only issued to one-stop shop, CEG and project coordinators. They're the only people who have access to it. It's not something that we can just send out to the builder and get the builder to fill it out. We're responsible for it. We're signing our name to it, and we're standing over the information on it. Once that we send it to the homeowner, and the homeowner can then go into their bank and submit that. If it's their own bank, obviously they'll have their own records of pay slips and all that sort of stuff, and what their standing is. If they go to a different bank, the bank still needs to get whatever it is, 3 months pay slips, bank statements. You're jumping through a lot of hoops if it's not your own bank, but you need to get approval from the bank then that they're happy to lend you the money. You can then draw down the loan. So you can draw down the loan before any work start. You don't need to wait for works to be completed or anything like that, which is a huge advantage of this. That's why it's here. You can draw down the loan at the start. You can then carry out the works, and then once the works are completed, SEI pay out the grants. If it's a one-stop shop, it doesn't really matter to you. They're paying it to the one-stop shop, and you've only paid net of the grants. If it's a CEG, you'll obviously see the benefit of those grants at the end. So that's the process. We get a lot of people who are maybe calling in, looking, Joe, can you send me out the HEULS form? I want to see if I'm eligible. Unfortunately, we need to kind of get a feel for what works you're looking at doing and what works you're considering, and putting together rough costs of that before we can complete the HEULS form. This is what the form looks like. So you can see there's a customer name, area code, MPRN, size of property. These are probably your key figures here. The proposed project costs, the proposed energy efficient or eligible costs, and then the grants. And this is the number then that they're looking at. So in the previous example, I should have actually filled this out. But what would go in there is the €15,106 that was eligible through the one-stop shop. That'll be the figure that'll be calculated here. And then this is where we're inputting data to calculate the energy performance to make sure we're getting at least a 20% uplift there. So this form is not for the homeowner. You don't need to worry about filling it out. You don't need to be concerned about it. It's our job, or whatever your one-stop shop's job is, to fill it out. We are signing our name to it, that we're standing over the information. And how it works in reality is all based around this MPRN number. So when you're submitting this form, it gets you submit it to your bank, gets pushed up to the SBCI, your bank puts it into the SCBI, and they mark that MPRN, which is your meter point reference number. It's kind of like your passport number for your house, identifies your house as the unique number for your house. And after a number of months, SEI are checking that number to see, okay, have grants been drawn down against this MPRN? And once they see grants being drawn down against this MPRN, SBCI are happy that the money has been used for what it was supposed to be used for. If they see, and I don't know, if they haven't told us what the specific time frame is, that they start questioning it, but we have got inquiries from the SBCI on a few projects that are in progress. And once we go back to them and say, or the homeowner goes back to them and says, yeah, works are in progress, we're just not finished, we'll be another 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is, 4 months, the SBCI are happy to say, okay, that's fine. We're still in the spirit of it. If after, again, they haven't given us a specific timeline, but if they found that somebody is offside and not using the money for what it should be used for, they'll revert you back to a higher interest rate, and I suspect they'll start charging penalties. Unfortunately, we haven't come across any cases where we have seen somebody who took the money and ran. But yeah, we suspect there'll be quite high penalties if that does occur, to try and prevent people from doing it in the future. So that's the HEULS. Do you have anything to add, Shane?
Nothing other than, I suppose, in theory, you could use it in any of those cases. But as you said, John, the bulk of them are used for what we would consider a one-stop shop, where one company like us or whoever else will come in, do all of the works relatively quickly, insulation, windows, doors. We can have all of that done. We can have a project wrapped up in from maybe when we put in the windows, if we went EWI, attic insulation, solar panels, heat pumps, we could have all that done in 3 or 4 weeks, and provided it's lower than the 75k, they're using that. But the minute you bring in a third party and they start knocking walls, all of a sudden it goes, number one, it starts to be a bigger thing. We don't see many of them actually, where it's a relatively new house with extensions. We don't see a lot of those.
No.
And so, but we do see a lot of really old house with 100 square meter extensions, so they tend to be 300,000 or 400,000. So it's not that can't avail of the HEULS where there's a builder, but it typically doesn't. It's typically a relatively simple, or what we would call a relatively shallow one-stop shop, cavity walls, EWI, to be fair.
Yeah, windows,
existing
doors,
footprint. Existing footprint.
Yeah.
But that's not to say you can't. It's just that we do not see it a lot.
Yeah.
But we don't think it's used enough.
Right.
We think it's fantastic. Like money at 3% is barely ahead of inflation. Even if you had the 15,000 and whatever there in your bank account, you should be leaving it there.
Yeah.
And
So we certainly don't think it's used as much as it should be. We're trying to inform everybody that's going through the one-stop shops that it's there. Some people are happy to take it, some people are hesitant, but
I think, as well as that, I think you covered it, John, but maybe there's a bigger list. We're coming up with a list of stuff there by the probably week, where people are coming saying, like, the air conditioning it was stuff we were doing anyway. But of course, all of a sudden, a lot of people asking, we're putting in solar or insulation or whatever it is, can you install air conditioning? Now that tends, don't be afraid of that, I suppose. It tends to be upstairs bedrooms, right? And it might well even be one air conditioning unit at the top of the stairs that's putting in whatever 3, 4, 5, 6 kilowatts of cooling, and okay, it makes its way around the house during the day or whatever, but is it perfectly the same temperature everywhere? No, it's not. But I can tell you 3 or 4 or 5 kilowatts of cooling into a house last week or the week before, we would all have taken it on the spot.
Yes.
And not in the overall, like, I remember talking to an accountant about his own house. He was saying it's 29 degrees in the upstairs. He said he would have paid €1,000 for cooling. Now, sorry, by the way, that's what he thought it was. I said, sorry, when I say cooling, that was the operating cost. Whereas the
Yeah.
reality for 2 or 3 weeks of cooling it at 4 or 5 kilowatt, I'm going to say was 100 to 200 quid.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that's a lot of money to certain people, but for a lot of people, 200 quid for those few weeks. And the reality is we're getting more of those
We're going to
weeks.
see more of them. Yeah.
But so we are seeing more people while we're in the house with an electrician. If he has a few extra hours, he's actually the cheapest you're ever going to see him again. Similarly, car chargers, sometimes they're forgotten about. While we're there, they're extremely cheap to put in. CCTV, we're up in the house. We're there with electricians. We're there with cherry pickers, ladders, roofers.
Yeah.
So those type of things while we're there. Now, we're not necessarily looking for that type of work, I'd have to say, but it's the type of thing while we're there, it's cheap to do, and it gets massaged into the paperwork somehow sometimes.
Does not. No.
But and all of a sudden you spread it out over a few years, and it's maybe CCTV is something everybody thinks about but rarely gets around to because they don't have the 2 or 3 grand or whatever it ends up costing. But spread over 20 years or over 10 years at 3%. While we're there, and we're cheap if we're there anyway.
It's the best time to do it. If you're ever going to do it, now's the time to do it.
Yeah. So we're seeing more of that. Anyway.
Super. I'm going to run through our next event. So just give you a high level of the next webinars that are coming up. So the 11th is next Tuesday. So we're doing, that's a Tuesday evening at 5 o'clock. We're doing solar PV. The following Tuesday, we have a webinar on the vacant and derelict grants. There's €70,000 available for the vacant and derelict grants, and they can be claimed alongside the SEI grants.
I'm sorry,
yes,
because I don't think it's in this list down along. The vacant and derelict is the house grant. There is the vacant over the shop grant, which is 140.
Yeah,
and I don't think we have one of those coming up in this week.
Show. No, we do cover it at a high level in the Tuesday evening one, but we probably need to put in
because at least make people aware of it. The vacant above the shop grant is €140,000 plus. On top of that, you're entitled to the SEI grants. You can use this CEG. You can use the one-stop shop, but you should be using the MUDs, the multi-unit dwellings grants. I mean, we saw a project there recently. They were getting 140,000 for the vacant above the shop, and they were getting 162 for the MUDs, right? So for 5 apartments, they were getting 302,000. Furthermore, slightly different grant is the VPRG, the commercial or previously public use building to resi. So if you had a Centra shop in the middle of Fermoy that you were converting to 4 apartments, provided the entirety of the commercial property is changed over to resi, 2 or more units, but there can't be any commercial left, you're entitled to up to 110,000.
By the way, if there is commercial left, you're into the above the shop category. So no matter what you do if you're putting in multiple apartments inside in the towns and villages, there's the vacant and derelict grants there, whether it's above the shop or individual or commercial, conversion for commercial. And on top of all those, you can get the SEI grants as well.
And the one thing to know about is where a domestic house was a 2-year, you had to have vacancy for 2 years. In some of the commercial cases, it's actually only 6 months.
Yeah.
Right. So give us a call if you need to know anything about it, but it's becoming a hot topic.
Yeah.
On top of, and I don't think with the next one we have not on this list either, because I did a presentation on Tuesday, so I know it's not on this list. The healthy age friendly scheme, which is an alternative to the warmer home scheme, which is where a person will get a fully funded free home upgrade. There's a healthy age friendly scheme coming. The details aren't fully out yet.
Yeah.
But all of the grants that you saw earlier with John, like the heat pumping at 12,500 is coming in at I think 16 or 16.5 or something like that. The windows are jumping, the external wall insulation is jumping. It's jumping like 50% or something like that. So they're dramatically higher grants to get people off of the warmer home scheme list to companies like us or whatever. But again, we should be doing a webinar on it.
Yeah.
And I was actually going to ask, I can see a lot of BER assessors and architects on this today. Is there anything else that you feel that we could be doing for you? We're nearly blind to these things because we're working at them every day. But are there things here that you feel would be useful? Like we're doing a lot of one-stop shops, vacant and derelict, solar, domestic, commercial. We do a lot of heat pump ones. We do windows, doors, air tightness, ventilation. Is there anything else
Yeah.
And we'll put it on, and I promise we'll regret it immediately.
This is how we got to more than 100 webinars over the course of the year, but
we can only do our best.
Yeah.
And
we're happy to do them, by the way. And yeah, if there is suggestions of topics that you would like to cover, a lot of these webinars have stemmed from conversations we've had with multiple BER assessors or architects where they were, I'm going to say, struggling with the information that was out there. And that's what's kind of brought us on to doing a webinar on it. So if you have a specific topic that you want us to cover, let us know. We're happy to facilitate it. Maybe, yeah. Shane says confidently, knowing John will do the work. But yeah, no, we're happy to take that on board. So go on.
Equally, any of these, we should say, if there are, because I can see there are architecture firms and so on, that if you wanted something more bespoke aimed at you, we come and meet you or do a presentation to your team. We're happy to do it.
Yeah.
And it can be more bespoke that day.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of these we've gone through. So the windows and doors upgrade grants on the 21st of August. That's a Friday, I'm assuming, at lunchtime. On September the 4th, we have that in-person heat pump training that we discussed at the start. On the 11th of September, we have the energy upgrade grants for businesses, for clubs and not-for-profits. There's a wide range of grants similar to the vacant derelict grants. There's a wide range of grants there that are available to businesses or clubs or community centres, anything like that. If you're doing energy upgrades, there is a grant. It's finding the right one. It can be sometimes very difficult. That's the purpose of that webinar, to give you a high-level overview of which is the one you should be choosing.
Plus, Johnny, a big thing is, can I get 2 grants or 3 grants? Because you could be entitled to an SEI grant, you could be entitled to a local authority grant, you might be entitled to a local enterprise office, or in some cases they're very specific. You cannot
claim the 2 of them at once.
Or 3.
Yeah.
And in other cases they don't care.
Yeah.
Now, once it doesn't come to more than 100%.
Yeah.
But so that's probably the big thing we get asked all the time when we have a local GAA club or golf club or a crash or something like that, bringing up what am I entitled to. They've seen information on grant A, when actually B or C or D or whatever, a mix of them is what they're actually looking for. And some of those grants we don't deal with.
Yeah.
Right. But I suppose our goal is
point you in the right direction.
We want to be the go-to company, I suppose, for anybody looking at grants, so we can then point you off to whoever it is, Clare County Council, and maybe put you in contact with someone. The
18th, again, which is another Friday one, we're at lunchtime, the community energy grant explained, and then on the 25th of September, we've heat pump common mistakes. That's Shane's favourite webinar. He gets to go on his rants about heat pumps. Unfortunately, we get an awful lot of bad press about them. A lot of it is unfortunately justified as an industry and as a country. I think we've a very poor understanding of how they operate. That heat pump training and that webinars that we do is all trying to increase the base level of knowledge around heat pumps, what they like, what they don't like, how they operate. And just trying to get more positive information out there. Shane will undoubtedly go on a rant that you can absolutely turn heat pumps off.
There's no doubt.
The biggest myth that's out there is that you cannot turn them off.
I promise I won't. Well, I will that day. But one thing I'll say is, just in case it's unclear there, 99% of the problems we see with heat pumps is not within the box. It's something that happened outside the box. When the box leaves Japan or Sweden or Germany or wherever it is, it's a machine. At the end of the day, it will do exactly what it should. We put it in the hands of a person or a number of people, maybe there's electricians, builders, heating designers and whatever, and we wonder how the heating or the running cost quadruples. Hard to believe now it'll quadruple. We all know, as I often use the example of a car, if I drive it at 100 miles an hour, my running cost will double, but it won't quadruple. A heat pump definitely will, right? And that sounds dramatic and whatever. Yes, Ashgrove sell heat pumps and all the rest of it. Okay, but I'm not in sales mode there. But it offends me weekly when I see these things being done. Really, really stupid mistakes. And written on the bottom corner of every slide there is science and fairness. We shouldn't be letting our emotions drive these decisions. It has to be, here's the science, here's what it says. If you want to do something else after that, off you go. But we'll be happy that we've try to educate and give them the right information. Inevitably, people make stupid mistakes, but they don't understand what they are. But all of them are very common sense things.
And all of them individually seem very silly and very small.
Yeah.
But then when you start adding them all up together, it results in the system now where you've quadrupled the running costs that you should have because of 4 or 5 bad decisions.
Well, three grand of a running cost where it should have been 700 quid.
Yeah.
And we see that once a week.
Yeah. So you can register for all those webinars on our website. You're probably all getting emails at this stage. We hope we're not bombarding you too much with emails, but we're doing a lot of webinars. We're trying to get good information out there. They're all free, as we said. And you can register for them either through the links on the emails or go to our website and click on the date that suits you or for the one you want to register for. So that's it.
You can get the recordings off our YouTube channel.
Yes, sorry, we do put recordings up on the YouTube channel. It might take a few days after they're done, but yeah, there should be recordings for a lot of them up there as well. Super. That's it for me. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you have a good weekend, and yeah, we'd see you in the next one.